Hello, everybody on Facebook. We are celebrating Albuquerque Beer Week this week. And my name is Tracy. I am with Visit Albuquerque. And we have John here with the New Mexico Brewers Guild. And we are just sitting here talking local brew. He's the expert here, so we're going to get a kind of a rundown of, you know, the great beer scene that Albuquerque currently has going on. And we're going to taste some really delicious brews. So how you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Awesome. So I guess I want to start off by just asking, you know, can you tell us a little bit about what the Albuquerque beer scene looks like right now? I know, you know, I feel like everybody kind of knows that there's kind of a boom happening right now, and we're starting to really, you know, pinpoint a spot on the map for microbrew craft beer. So if you could just tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, we're, I think, close to a decade into a boom right now. That I think the seminal moment probably happened about 8 or 9 years ago when Marble Brewery opened, and kind of put, I shouldn't say put, but raised awareness about local craft beer in Albuquerque and in New Mexico, and showed the potential of what could happen when you have a local brewery brewing, you know, world-class beers in a really nice environment, and being successful at it. So there were a lot of people that were in the brewing business at the time that said, hey, you know what, if those guys can do it, then certainly we can do it too, because we know how to brew beer and we're pretty good business people. And so you saw a lot of other breweries starting opening like La Cumbre Brewing Company and Bosque Brewing Company, and the list goes on and on. You know, we have a lot of those beers here today. Canteen, our hosts here today, they've been in the brewing business for as long as anybody in New Mexico, and are very well known for brewing really exceptional ales and lagers. They've won tons of medals throughout their history, and in a lot of ways, you know, you look through the DNA of the breweries in New Mexico, or the family tree of breweries, and you can kind of trace it back from the present breweries down to the few that were around back in those days. And you know, Canteen was one of them, formerly known as Il Vicino Brewery. Chama River Brewing Company, which is here in Albuquerque. Turtle Mountain, which is out in Rio Rancho. Are we allowed to talk about Rio Rancho breweries, even though this is Visit Albuquerque? Okay, just making sure. Anyway, so it's been happening for a long time, and it's abundantly clear to anybody that's out there right now drinking beer and interested in craft beer that, yeah, or even if you're not, there are a lot of breweries in Albuquerque. I think we have 40 plus breweries in Albuquerque now, whereas 10 years ago we didn't have half that number in the entire state.
That's a boom if I've ever heard one. And I know a lot of these beers that these microbreweries are producing are winning some really big medals from pretty prestigious competitions. I know we've got a few of them here today. If you could just kind of give us a highlight reel of some of those beers that, you know, have won, you know, really great medals. We can kind of taste them as we go, and hopefully you can give me an idea as to what I should be looking for to taste as we kind of try these beers.
Sure. So, disclaimer, obviously I think we have what, 4 breweries represented here, or 3, 4. We have a lot more great breweries than this in Albuquerque. These happen to be the packaging breweries, so they're here today because they make a nice visual and we can talk about them. But I want to give a plug to all the smaller breweries that are out there too, that are really doing wonderful things and that are winning medals on the national level that aren't packaging, but certainly deserve our attention and accolades. I'll start off with the La Cumbre Project Dank. So we have an interesting story there in that Project Dank won the National IPA Challenge in 2013, I think it was, and also won it this year in 2017. In between, in 2015 and 16, Bosque Brewing won the National IPA Championship. So an Albuquerque brewery has won 4 years straight. I don't think any other state can say that. Bosque won back-to-back years, which had never happened before. The other cool thing is that Both of these have won the New Mexico IPA Challenge multiple times. Unfortunately, we don't have Bosque's IPA here. They're Scale Tipper IPA that won, but we can still talk about it. They won 2 years in a row at the New Mexico IPA Challenge. Last year, it was Boxing Bear Brewing Company that took down all the big dogs like La Cumbre and Marble and Bosque, who get all the attention. And at the New Mexico IPA Challenge, they ended up winning last year. So I like to think that you can have the best IPA in the country, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have the best IPA in New Mexico. But that being said, we'll talk about the La Cumbre Project Dank. New Mexico is known, and Albuquerque is known for IPA. Is what we do. We do big, bold, hoppy beers that are redolent with hop aromas and floral aromas and all kinds of interesting bitterness. But this one is probably stands out among any IPA in the country, and it's delicious. Delicious.
For those of you who are just tuning in, this once again is we're celebrating Albuquerque Beer Week here, and we've got Visit Albuquerque, and we've got Visit I'm Tracy with Visit Albuquerque, and John is here with the New Mexico Brewers Guild, and we are talking about some of our, some of the local breweries here in Albuquerque, and we're trying some of their beers, and a lot of which he was just mentioning are really well awarded beers. They've won some really amazing awards in a lot of categories. So what approximately are we looking for flavor wise with this Project Dank?
So the Project Dank, I think it's a pretty well balanced beer. Now, if the brewmaster and owner of La Cumbre heard me say that, he'd probably be disappointed because he likes to think his IPA is totally unbalanced. It's all hops. And the malt kind of falls to the back. But I think it's actually got a nice malty character that supports some really aggressive hopping. They use whole hop flowers. They do a very aggressive wet hop, a very aggressive dry hop to bring out a lot of bitterness, bring out a lot of the aromatics that you want to see in IPAs. You don't want them to be one-dimensional, just like boom bitter. You want them to have a full palette of aromas and flavors, and I think this does, and that's why it's always done so well in competition.
Well, and also, am I correct in saying that this beer that won the National IPA Challenge, that the National IPA Challenge is kind of a blind taste test from the public? Is that correct?
No, not quite. Actually, it goes to judging panels around the country, and it is blind. But when it gets down to it's so structured like the NCAA basketball championship, in that you start off with a huge field of breweries, and they go through these single elimination rounds where they go head to head with one another, and the winner of that pairing moves on. So you have the original field that goes down to a field of 32. The Sweet 16, the Elite 8, the Final Four, and then lastly the championship. So, I don't know. So I honestly don't know if it's anonymous or blind, because quite frankly, if you put two beers in front of a judge, they're probably going to be able to pick out what's what, and especially if they've judged those beers in the past. We have 45 viewers. Those are the highest ratings I've ever gotten, by the way.
Questions. If you've got any ideas as you're watching, we encourage all of you viewers, send us a question, send us a comment. We're going to be looking through them. Hopefully towards the end we can spend a little time answering your questions, so please let us know your thoughts, questions. I guess we can also kind of move on to the next one. We've got the Marble Double White here, which I know I've been a fan of the Double White for a while now. It's hard to not go to Marble and not order a pint of the Marble Double White. So tell me a little bit about this one.
So Double White is a Belgian-style wit beer. It's brewed with wheat, hence wit. Wit is Belgian for either wheat or white. They're cognates. And this is a I would say a traditional Belgian white. It's fairly high alcohol in volume. It's around 7% alcohol by volume. It's the same style category that was popularized by Shock Top and Blue Moon. But I would say that I call this the not dumbed down version. This is super aromatic. You really taste the Belgian ale yeast in it. Which shout out to Chicago, Elaine.
Hi, Elaine in Chicago.
Yep.
Cheers.
Anyway, this is one of. So I understand. I used to be with Marble Brewery, and that was a really good seller for us. But I understand now it's surpassed the IPA. That is Marble's single biggest seller on draft and in package, and deservedly so, because it's really good. It's a thirst quenching beer, but it's also very flavorful and aromatic. It's not boring. It has enough, it's high gravity enough that you feel like you're drinking a substantial beer, not drinking something too light or watery. So it kind of covers all the bases. It's a thirst quencher. It's flavorful. It's certainly good, good hot weather beer, but you can drink it anytime.
I know I've been on several camping trips already since they've been canning the double white, where that's been a staple in my my camping cooler. So it's now that it's canned, it's like, oh great, I can bring it everywhere. So let's go ahead and move on to we'll go ahead and move to the Marble Pilsner, which I believe has also won some awards. We'll have that there. The Marble Pilsner. Awesome.
So I was talking to you before we started recording, and New Mexico is known, and Albuquerque in particular, is known for super bold, hoppy beers. And what kind of goes unnoticed is that we have some really finely crafted lagers in our repertoire that have gotten a lot of accolades nationally, even though people here don't drink them as much as they drink our well-known big hop bombs. But the Marble Pilsner, I think, has won silver at the GABF, the Great American Beer Festival, and also at the World Beer Cup, which are both like the Super Bowl and the World Series of craft beer. If you win medals at either of those two events, that's a big deal. If you get a gold or a silver, I mean, my gosh, there's a lot of competition in categories like Pilsner, and IPA is it is the most heavily contested category of any beer style at the Great American Beer Festival. But anyway, there's a secret or a joke among brewers. What do we drink when we're not drinking, when we're at the end of the day working in the brewery? And everybody would think, oh, we're going to go drink a big hop bomb. It's like, no, we're probably going to drink a really nicely crafted lager beer. So we go for things like the Marble Pilsner or the La Cumbre beer, because they're thirst quenchers. They're typically lower in alcohol content, so they're sessionable. You can drink 3 or 4 of them without becoming inebriated. But unlike the macro light lagers, whose names I won't mention, such as Miller or Coors or Budweiser, these are flavorful. They're light lagers, but they actually taste like something. They're not extremely pale in color, overly carbonated, with a super light malt bill, etc. They're tasty beers that you can hang your hat on.
Yeah, you're right. That really does taste like the perfect beer for after you finish, a day of work, or, maybe working out in the yard. You want something really refreshing and crisp. That's exactly what I would go to. Also, for those of you still just joining us, we are celebrating Albuquerque Beer Week. I'm Tracy with Visit Albuquerque. We have John with the New Mexico Brewers Guild, and we are talking and tasting all things local beer. So if you're just tuning in, welcome. We're so happy to have you. And don't forget to comment questions. Towards the end, we'll hopefully get to a few questions and let us know your comments. Perfect. So it looks like the next one we're moving to is it's the Bosque Scotia. Am I saying that correctly? Perfect. Yeah, so I'm really excited to try this one. This one definitely has a darker color, so I'm excited to hear about this one.
So the Bosque Scotia is a Scotch ale or a Scottish ale, and as you would surmise, this style originated in Scotland. It's a high gravity beer. It's got a big malt bill, which means there's just a bunch of malt in there. And malt is the fermentable ingredient in beer, which the yeast turns into alcohol. So if you put more of it in there, and more malt that is in there, and the yeast start doing their job, you're going to get a higher alcohol content. But at the same time, you also get a lot of the malty, robust character in the beer. Now this one is brewed with dark malts. So you take barley and you malt it, which means you essentially toast it, and depending on how long you toast it, you'll get a continuum of color. A super lightly toasted malt is going to give you something like a lager or a pilsner color. That's actually I think this is the lager here. We got those switched, but anyway, if you toast it longer or kiln it longer, you're going to end up with very dark malts. So that's why this is dark. Okay, but it's a bright beer. You can see that it's clear, which it's supposed to be. And because of the big malt bill, it's higher in alcohol. I think it's around 8-point-something% alcohol by volume. So this is the antithesis of what we were talking about with the light lagers. This is a beer that you drink, one or two of rather than three or four of, and you're perceiving and enjoying the rich colors and flavors. A lot of the residual sweetness that comes through from the malt, and you could say maybe it's a little colder weather beer, fall, winter, as opposed to a summer beer. But there are no hard and fast rules. You can drink any beer you want anytime you want, and
that's the great part about it is it's just sort of you find what you like and you drink it whenever you want. That's part of the fun. That's a thing I've sort of learned with wine drinking too. People ask, you should have it seasonally, but you should have it, from what I understand, you should just have what you like when you like it. Cool. So let's move on over to the La Cumbre beer, which is kind of fun because it's beer, but it's called beer. I know I have enjoyed this really great beer on a number of occasions. If I'm not mistaken, this beer won gold for the International Style Lager at the World Beer Cup. Great American Beer Festival. Perfect. Awesome. Yeah. Oh, it's such a refreshing beer. I think it seems like it sort of falls in the category of that refreshing Pilsner, correct?
That's right. So both these styles are lagers. The Pilsner is a Czech Pilsner style lager, and the beer is either, you could call it an American lager or an international lager, which means, unlike a German lager, is that oftentimes you have adjunct ingredients. An adjunct is anything besides malt that aids in fermentation, or feeds yeast. It has sugars. In this case, international and American lagers oftentimes have either rice or corn as an adjunct ingredient to do a couple things. It lightens the body and the color of the beer. It's cheaper. That's why they did that in the old days. When the macrobreweries were trying to figure out the most efficient and cost-effective way of making beer that appealed to the lowest common denominator. I hate to say that, but I will. That's how they brewed their beer. Now it's come full circle, and a lot of breweries are doing Mexican-style lagers or American-style lagers. So I was telling you before, the interesting thing about this was we're talking about the Great American Beer Festival and how important that is to craft breweries. The Great American Beer Festival is open to any American brewery, including the macros like Anheuser-Busch and Molson, Coors, and whatever. So this is what they brew. They brew American or international style lagers. So in 2011, when La Cumbre was brand new, they actually won a gold medal for, and there's the gold medal, for beer. And it's called beer. It's kind of a joke. It's like generic, what are you drinking? Beer. It's just beer. There are no, there are no frills. But this was actually, so the adjuncts in there are a lot lighter than you would get in most American macro light lagers. That's why it's really flavorful still and super enjoyable. Hang on one second. I wet my palate. But anyway, going back to my point, so La Cumbre, this little brewery that was a year old, not even, from Albuquerque, New Mexico, beat all those big breweries in their own category. So yeah, we can brew hoppy IPAs and win on, run the board with those, but we can also take the most highly consumed beer in our country, which is American light lagers, and win in that category too. And that's something special about Albuquerque's breweries.
That is really amazing. I mean, the fact that, we're going up against the big dogs like that and taking home the gold, that's pretty impressive. And it doesn't surprise me. It's incredibly delicious. All right, so next one we will move on to. We'll get started with the La Cumbre Elevated IPA. You can get a shot of that. Welcome, new viewers. We are tasting wonderful Albuquerque beer in celebration of Beer Week. We've got the New Mexico Brewers Guild here with me, so join us as we get started on the La Cumbre Elevated IPA, which has been a favorite. I personally love IPAs, so this has been a favorite of mine for a very long time.
So these two beers that we're talking about, the La Cumbre beer and the La Cumbre Elevated IPA, kind of put New Mexico and Albuquerque on the map in 2011 as a serious beer state and city. Elevated IPA won gold medal in 2011 at the Great American Beer Festival. Again, that's like, I won't try to come up with a bunch of analogies, but it's the big deal, I mean, for craft brewers, the Great American Beer Festival is where we compare ourselves to one another, and the wheat is separated from the chaff. And the La Cumbre IPA won gold that year. It was by far had the most entrants of any style category for competition at Great American Beer Festival ever. Hundreds of IPAs were submitted to competition that year from all, you name any brewery that's known for IPA, their IPA was in there. And La Cumbre, again, this little Albuquerque brewery that nobody had ever heard of except for us because, we knew about them. Taught him everything he knows. Won a gold medal. It was crazy. We couldn't believe it. And all of a sudden, Albuquerque was on the map. There were breweries that have been around forever like Canteen and Santa Fe Brewing Company and that were doing a great job and had won a lot of medals. But it wasn't really, on the general, we all knew about it in the brewing industry. It was a big deal to us, but it hadn't reached, that level of, that threshold where the general public was really keyed in on it yet. But in 2011, regular Joe was starting to pay attention to craft beer, and all of a sudden they heard, oh, an Albuquerque brewery won a gold medal for IPA, and it you don't even have to know how many were entered for competition or the fact that IPA is the number one craft beer style. You just know that it's a big deal. You just know, and it was a big deal, and it really the trend that maybe Santa Fe Brewing and Canteen and Marble had started, La Cumbre kind of took forward and really got us known out there on a national stage.
That's really fantastic. I mean, that beer, it sounds like this beer is just really kind of a superstar amongst superstar beers, so that's pretty cool. I believe next we have Zach here. We're about to try some Canteen beers, which is where we are right now. We are at the Canteen Brew House, and so we're about to try some of those Canteen beers. And here we've got Zach. He is the head brewer for Canteen, and I feel like there's no better person to just kind of tell us, what we should be tasting and what we should expect from these wonderful beers that he's worked hard on brewing. Hi, Zach.
How you doing today? Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming down to the Canteen. And So we're going to start with the Dougie Style Amber Ale, which won a gold medal in 2014 at the Great American Beer Festival. It's an American amber that blends malt character with a little bit of citrus American hop character with Cascade and Centennial hops, and not, I'd say, too many hops to approach that pale ale category, but still maintain that balance in being a malty, easier finishing amber ale. So
It's good. Very good. That's great.
yeah.
And then I think the next one we've got here is it's your IPA.
Exodus IPA. Hopefully some of you have heard of it or had it. It's a 4-time New Mexico IPA Challenge winner. A West Coast IPA that uses a lot of hops. Hops primarily starting with Citra and adding Equinox, Eldorado, Amarillo, and some Simcoe. So I think what I love about Exodus IPA is just it's got enough malt character to support all those hops. I think the bitterness is not extreme. I think that in every IPA, maybe there was a time when people loved really bitter beer, and I think the pendulum is swinging back to balance, and I think the malt character in a great IPA is sometimes unnoticed. It's there to support the beer and does such a good job of supporting those hops that it's the bass player. Yeah. The guy that's he's got his hat low and he's holding the whole band together. So hopefully you guys pick up on a lot of aroma for that hop and beer. And I also heard there was a question earlier about collab beers. And I'd love to mention that we have a collab in the tank now, a Munich Keller beer that was brewed with the Canteen and joined by Marble Brewery, Santa Fe Brewing Company, Chama River, Nexus, and Turtle Mountain. This Munich Keller was brewed with Cargill malts and donated all the malt from Cargill. It's lagering now, and it should be ready in about a month. So.
That sounds awesome. That sounds like the ultimate collaboration beer that we can all look forward to. That's really exciting. We have a question here from our viewers. Brenna, hi Brenna, wants to know more about the hop that only grows wild in New Mexico. Either one of you guys could.
Why don't you answer that? Okay.
So the name of the hop is New Mexicanus. Okay, that's easy to remember, right? So hops are a wildflower that can be indigenous to a lot of areas. Hops are, there are a lot of the noble hops are from Europe, but there are also wild cousins here in New Mexico, the New Mexicanus hop, which is not a hybridized. It's not a hop that's been bred. It's a hop that was growing wild that you could go out and actually gather and use for beer. So that was probably 20 years ago or so that it really got noticed. Over the years, it's gone into the hands of botanists and agronomists that have selectively bred that hop for a lot of different characteristics, and there are different varieties of it now. It's not really a bittering hop; it's more of a sweet kind of backbone hop, and it's gotten some notoriety. I think it was Sierra Nevada did a New Mexicanus hopped beer. I think they call it New Mexicanus. The monks up at Monastery of Christ in the Desert in ABQ have a hop yard. They grow them too, primarily for their own use in their own beers, but they also sell some of them commercially for New Mexico brewers to use, and for home brewers to use. And now they're actually being bred and cultivated outside of New Mexico primarily. The ones that you can buy commercially are not grown here on a large scale anyway.
We have some more questions coming. However, there is a special beer that I know Canteen has. I believe, I remember you saying you're releasing it today. Before we answer some more questions, would you mind telling us a little bit about this this special guy that you've got here for us?
Yeah. Well, today we released for Albuquerque Beer Week a American kettle sour we call Social Capital, and Social Capital is an ever-changing American kettle sour. This is the 5th or 6th version of it, and this particular release was brewed with sweet basil, coconut, and lemongrass, kind of Thai inspired. The beer itself has lactobacillus alone, so it has a really nice sour tartness, and the coconut helps kind of sweeten that tartness, that edge in the finish. The aroma is a little sweet basil, and it's a fun beer to make, and I think a nice summer thirst quencher. So, yeah, come on down and enjoy.
I know when I first smelled that, I didn't want to stop smelling it, and then I tasted it, and it tastes even better than it smells. That's like the whole package: smell, taste. I mean, that is a really good sour beer. Holy moly! Wow, great. Well, thank you so much for giving us some information.
Say one thing, really quickly before you go. I said a little while ago you can have the best IPA in the country or even in the world, but it may not be the best IPA in New Mexico. So last year at the IPA Challenge, it wasn't this one, yeah, but his IPA took second place in the IPA Challenge. I think it was like 2 points behind Boxing Bear, which ended up winning. But he beat this guy, which won a gold medal and has 100 on Beer Advocate. 100 rating, and also beat Bosque's IPA, which has won the National IPA Challenge 2 times, the New Mexico IPA Challenge 2 times, and has won at GABF and blah, 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 blah. But Zach here knocked them both out last year, so congratulations, man.
I just want to say that, every brewer in this town, in the state, makes each one of us better, and this state, the craft beer scene in New Mexico keeps getting better and better, and these IPAs keep getting better because we share what we know, and we help each other out. And last year's New Mexico IPA Challenge was the closest in history, and it speaks to the parity of the quality of IPAs that we continue to create. And it was a fun competition, and I look forward to doing it again this summer. So hope to see everybody there. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Zach.
All right.
Thank you. It sounds like it's very clear where the next beercation destination should be. So we've just got a few more questions from the viewers that we would love to answer. Let's see, we got Tim would like to know which Albuquerque brewery is the most awarded.
I don't know. I don't know. There so many of them have won so many awards that it's hard to say. Canteen has been around for a couple decades, and they back before craft brewing was a thing. These guys were winning medals at the World Beer Cup and the Great American Beer Festival, so they've obviously got a ton. Marble has a ton. Marble's been around for almost 10 years now and, has won a lot of medals. La Cumbre is relatively newer, but has been very strong as well. So the short answer is I don't really know, but we've won a lot of medals, and certainly more medals than our population would indicate.
It's always a good thing when you can't determine who has the most awarded beers because everybody has so many. That's a pretty good problem to have. So I think we are just about ready to wrap everything up. Oh, no, we're not. We've got a beer map. In case, this couldn't get any better, there's a little guide to, if you want to come visit Albuquerque, there's a perfect route you can take and experience all of the breweries we've talked about, and then some. Like he said, there's so many breweries in Albuquerque. We have barely scraped the surface. So here, I'll give you a second to kind of give a rundown of this map here.
Okay, so the New Mexico Brewers Guild, we produce this map every year, and we have been for the last 5 or 6 years. It's the size hasn't changed, but the number of breweries on it really has. So it's not a robust navigational tool, but it can give you an idea of the distribution of breweries throughout the state. And here in Albuquerque, we have 57 member breweries who, among them, have probably 80 plus locations if you count all the tap rooms. But if you're going to come to Albuquerque and see Albuquerque and perhaps travel outside of Albuquerque, pick one of these up. They're going to be at every brewery in the state. And also when you fly into the Sunport, they'll be at the visitABQ visitor center there. Ask the nice ladies there to give you one of them and then plan your trip. Again, it's, you're not going to want to follow this map because it's not in very much detail anymore because there are just so many breweries. There are 40 plus breweries in Albuquerque and all the tap rooms, et cetera, et cetera. But what you can do is say, okay, I'm going to look at the map and then I'm going to jump to the New Mexico Brewers website, the Guild website, which is nmbeer.org, and there's a digital map there that you can actually pull up on your smartphone, and you can zoom into different areas, and you can plan a route and check out all the breweries here, and then get outside of Albuquerque and check those out as well.
Absolutely, and it's always nice to have a resource to kind of help you remember exactly where your beer destinations are when you get here. Look at that! Oh, it's colorful. Oh, that's great. That is fantastic. Yeah, so you can find that at the Visitor Center. It's perfect. So before we wrap this up, there's just a couple more questions from you viewers. Hello, everyone. A couple more questions from the viewers that we would like to answer. Angelo would like to know if there are any ales on the table. Do we have any ales here?
I think I know who Angelo is. And last time he did a live stream, I wasn't very kind to him. So that's actually a softball question. That's nice. Yes, in fact, there are some ales on this table. So they're all ales with the exception of the Pilsner and the Pilsner and the beer. So those are lagers. There are two kinds of beer. There are lagers and there are ales. We're getting told to wrap it up here, so that's me. Okay, so yes, there are ales, and I'll get you back, Angelo.
One last question before we wrap it up. Dave wants to know what kind of beers he should go for if he's not as interested in the IPA scene. Just sort of a quick abbreviated answer. What kinds of really great, featured beers that you can think of off the top of your head that would be for a non-IPA drinker, maybe darks or stouts, something of that nature.
So anything else, basically, and it really just depends on your taste, but obviously we have very good light lagers, or not light lagers, but lagers. We have the beer, we have the Pilsner, but all of our breweries brew either a golden ale or a lager of some sort, or a Kolsch, which are light-bodied, light-colored beers that are very drinkable. There are a lot of ambers out there. There are a lot of pale ales, too, which, pale ale used to be probably the most popular craft beer. And it's been usurped by IPAs, but pale ales are like an entry-level beer where you get the aromatics and you get just a slight bitterness, but they're very flavorful and delicious. And of course you have stouts and porters, which we brew very good stouts and porters here in Albuquerque, so you can't go wrong with those. Go to one of the breweries here in Albuquerque, ask for a tasting flight, try them all, and then pick your favorite one and buy one of those.
All right, well, I think this is a wrap for now. Everybody have a wonderful Albuquerque Beer Week. If you're celebrating here in Albuquerque or are planning to potentially celebrate here in Albuquerque, the great thing is every week is Beer Week in Albuquerque. That's the wonderful thing about it. So happy Beer Week. Everybody remember to please drink responsibly and have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday. Cheers.